So one of the things you and I talked about was how to create a corporate culture that really comes alive, and this notion of managing tensions, because I do think that's a subtlety here that I wouldn't want people to miss, which is, yes, they're doing all these unusual things, but they're very, I think, to a level I have not often seen articulated. They're very clear that the tensions exist and that they've made a choice about where they're going to land on the side of those tensions. So direct feedback, for example, for many people can feel like an affront. A lot of people would struggle with that. And they've decided very clearly to land on one side of that tension. So, clearly the culture's not just lip service. Clearly he wouldn't have invited you in if he thought it wasn't unusual or important what they were trying to do. So how do you get that culture to really land?
Yeah, well, this was actually one of my most interesting learnings, and I have to say this is not in the book, so it just didn't seem to fit in the format. But
well, you've still got an HBR article to come. You can.
That's my next one. But what I learned was I've studied a lot of corporate cultures, and I have to say I've never really been that interested in them, because I found that most corporate cultures, what the company says has very little to do with the way that people behave, and they tend to define their corporate cultures in these positive absolutes, like here we value integrity or we value respect, and the problem.
And then you turn out to be Enron.
Yeah, for example.
Like that was the thing on the wall. I remember visiting one of their corporate, it was like integrity, respect, transparency. I forget what the last one was.
Judgment. It's always judgment. It's usually those four. But what I learned as I was studying this corporate culture, which is one of the rare companies where what they've articulated actually comes alive in the behavior of the employees, is the importance of speaking in tensions when you define your corporate culture. So for example, instead of saying something like, oh, well, we value high performance, which may on the surface, anyone would say, okay, we value high performance. But you really have to think, what is that intention with? For example, if I get to a point that I have an employee who's behaving adequately and he's trying hard, but he's not the best that I could get, and I give him clear feedback multiple times, he can't improve, do I find another job for him, move him out, or do I keep him on the team? Okay, now we have a dilemma, and the tension is, if I get rid of him, I get higher performance, right? As the performance on the team then spirals up. But if I keep him, then I get a stronger sense of security and psychological safety on the team, right? So that's a real dilemma, right? And if companies really want their organizational cultures to come alive, they have to think about what are the big dilemmas that are impacting our managers' decisions, and which way do we want them to turn? And whichever way you choose them to turn, you have to think in sort of those tensions. Now, Netflix has chosen high performance over security. Another interesting example, you spoke about candor, but that's a big one, right? Like, is it more important for us to have this environment where people are really pushing one another to higher and higher performance because of candid feedback, even at the risk of breaking the relationship? Or is it better for us to work towards a work environment where we all feel it's just really pleasant? It's really pleasant to work here because we feel it's, just niceness all around, right? And, you've got a choice. So what Netflix has done, I think, is something that every company should do, which is figure out which are the most important dilemmas, the most important tensions that are impacting the choices of your managers, and then tell your managers, which way you want them to gear. And then what you've articulated really starts to take life in the organization as people make decisions based on those guidelines.
I think that's profound, because I could also see, I could see a strategy where you would go the other way, right? Where you would say, we're going to be an army marching an inch at a time, but we're all going to be lined up together, arm in arm, kumbaya, and I could see other contexts in which that might work, right? I mean,
Well,
one of my,
sure. I mean, it's a dilemma, and that's why when people read the Netflix culture deck or our book, right? Some people read it and think, "Oh my gosh, I love this. This is just like the first articulation of a good company." And some people read this and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so terrible." Right? And of course, it's because the dilemmas are clear, and there's a clear direction that has been chosen, and that's so rare in the articulation of corporate culture. So I really encourage your readers, I mean our listeners here, right? I really encourage you, go back and take a look at how your organization has articulated corporate culture, right? And look at, are you speaking in absolute positives? And if so, maybe you're wasting your breath.
mm-hmm.
And instead, could you start thinking about some of those tensions and how to, organize some debates around them, whatever it is that your organization decides?